All right, welcome to the discussion for Dolor and Shadow. We have Angela back. Yay! Um, I really liked your book a lot, and it made me sad because I haven't had Norwegian food in so long, and then I remembered I'm going to Minnesota tomorrow, and so I'm super excited. Yay! I probably won't get any cloudberries, but I will probably get lingonberry
Yeah.
jam, which best thing. So, let's see. Thinking is hard. Thinking is very hard.
What time? I,
Mm,
I got your email. I don't know what time you sent it. And
what? Yeah, that is. I sent it probably a little bit after I finished the book. I read the sneak chapter, and I checked email and stuff in between. But I spent yesterday morning painting the sign. So the guy I'm staying with, his name is Stu, and he works for the Northwest Maritime Center here in Port Townsend. And he has this little like shed where he keeps all of his like random gadgetry for boat stuff. And it's everyone calls it Stu's shed, but it didn't have a sign. And it's this like old weathered shed that looks like a mini barn tucked in amongst a bunch of blackberry brambles
yeah,
behind another building. So I decided it would be really funny to make like a fancy gold painted sign
right.
for his shed. So that was my yesterday morning.
Huh.
It's all like cursive and anyway, we put it up and then I spent all afternoon finishing. I think I had gotten halfway through before that, but I've
So
been
it's
doing a
fresh.
lot this month, so it is pretty fresh. Um, I was thinking about all of the awesome things, of course, like when I was falling asleep, and now I can't remember all of the awesome things I was thinking about. They'll come back to me eventually, but um, I really liked all of the interactions between the characters.
Mhm.
They're normal things people would do if they were actually in a situation like that.
Yes.
Like I really liked the bickering between Rune and Colin, especially in the second half, because like I mean, watching them do that, like, just it made me laugh because I've watched so many of my friends do exactly the same thing and then end up together later.
I have.
I'm like, I know exactly where this is going, and I felt exactly like it made me feel like it was a comrade of all the people who were teasing either Rune or Callan about it because I was like, yes.
Yeah, I had so much fun. It's no secret when I first wrote Dolor and Shadow, it was going to be a romance. And there are some elements of the romance genre that I love. And it's funny. I did a test on my husband. I said, romance novels have a really bad rap because it's all about rippling pectorals. And I said, but I have one author who I just admire, Karen Marie Moning, and I picked up one of her books and I actually read it through, removing all the, I'm going to talk about my feelings and hypothesize how I'm feeling about this. I removed all of that. I removed all of the what if he doesn't like me and the description of the man. And I just read the dialogue and the action of this one saying. My husband
Mm-hmm.
roared laughing. And I'm like, romance novels, once you get through all that other stuff, is hilarious, and they've got
Yeah.
excellent tit for tat going. And I'm like, I really love that. I love it. And the only place you can find it is romance novels. So I pulled that from romance novels, that bickering, that tit for tat. It's very real.
Yeah, it is.
Can have a queen and a king with this kind of issue coming together with that severity of a situation, and they have to be together, they have to get along, and they don't like it, and it just, yeah, I didn't sugarcoat that down. I kept it exactly as it would have been. So
Yeah, it's awesome. And I really liked the like after they've spent so long bickering, then there's that one scene where they're like going to sleep and Colin is like, Rune, Rude. Rude.
Yes, Helen.
Like, that totally happens in real life. This is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
there's one moment. Yeah, she throws fire. This girl can just snap her fingers and she's got flames. And there's one moment very early on when they first make their pact, and he's trying to get a fire started, and it's just that click, 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 click of those stones, and her eyes twitching like, start the fire already, and boom, she sends off her fire, ignites the entire the dirt, the entire campfire he's got going, and he falls back like, thanks. It's one of my, her fire was so much fun to write. Just like, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, I loved her throwing fire. That one.
Yeah, I also liked like her obliviousness, her sort of obliviousness with what's his name, Brand,
Oh yeah,
the random guy, the random guy in the little town.
Brand took some developing. Brand went through two rewrites. I started him off as an arrogant, little prissy man who was definitely boasting far more than he ever was worth. And Kalan used Brand to kind of stick it to Rune. They're walking, and it's one of those persons where you get 2 minutes into the conversation and you're like, yeah, I'll show Rune. But then she's like, oh, why did I do this? And the guy was just a jerk. So I had this whole thing written. I should have put it in my deleted scenes on my website, where they are confronted by guards. Olaf's men find them, and she takes them out right away. And in the process, Brand accidentally gets hit and knocked out cold. And I'm like, no, I really wanted to do something different with Brand. So I completely changed his character. I figured if he was going to be that snivelly, Rune would not find him threatening. Rune would be like, whatever. So I went back and I made Brand into this other kind of character, and where Rune legitimately had kind of something to worry about. And also I didn't want Cullen to be daft. I wanted her to look at it and go, absolutely be taken away with what he was saying. And Brand became the opportunity where I could insert, let me tell you about this world that they're in. I want to show you the island that just came out, the paper that's coming out of Arabia at the time, the discovery of America at the time. And I used Brand to really flesh out the other side of the world that you really don't see unless you're with an explorer. And it really was an age of exploration at that time, Vikings. And to finally pull that out using Brand, I had all this information and I was collecting it like, I really want to use this, but how is it relevant? And when I got to Brand, I used it all. It wasn't a don't remember this. You don't need to remember any of it, but it was just to flesh out this world they lived in was not small. It was not this little island and everything else is out of touch. They were, and this is my challenge with the Norse people, of all people to write about. The Norsemen were explorers. They were familiar with the news in the Orient, the Spice Islands, with the Romans. They had knowledge going on around them. They knew everything. So I couldn't close off their world and make it small. And Brand was one of those persons who made the world really, it was my opportunity to show you just how big this world was. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
So,
I think it really helped make him, like, he came across as very genuinely interested in wanting Colin to go with him. And, like, I think adding all of those little details really, like, if that had been a real situation and he was really a real person trying to convince a girl to go across the sea with him, then he would have, like, a girl who has, like, a kingdom to run is not just going to leap up and leave without a lot of convincing. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the fact that he tried so hard, like, makes him respectable.
Yeah.
And makes him more. Yeah.
I had so much fun. Maps in the stars. Did you have a favorite scene?
Did I have a favorite scene? I think I like the end on the boats.
Now refresh my memory. You got to see.
Oh, the part where she's like on the boat and after she's fixed. I don't know if this is in the end or if it's in the beginning of the next one.
I think it's Lord Lies. Yeah, that's chapter 1. It won't be chapter 1. It's going to get moved, but it is the very beginning of Lord Lies.
Okay, so like it's the part where after she's taken the arrow out of Rune's shoulder and Rune has like gone completely drunk, and then he's like back and like she's on a boat full of guys who hate her except for Rune, and they're all like teasing him because she's the enemy and he fell in love with her, and they can tell even if he doesn't want to admit it. And they're all being, guys on a boat, and she's like,
oh, that brings back I cannot read Madeline's Lies more. Oh, yes.
Yes. Like,
I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about Lord Lenolyn's Lies. It's not Dolor and Shadow, and I don't care. I wrote these books completely, probably 5 times. And around the 3rd or 4th time, I spent the entire writing going, they're Vikings. I've got to bring in longboats. And I just could not do that. And I'm like, how am I going to get longboats? How could I not do Vikings and not show these boats? And I did it. I had written the entire book 3 or 4 times, without showing these boats. And I was so angry about this. And I could not force them. If they came in, they came in. I could not force them. I made an error with the location of Alfheim. Alfheim does exist. It's actually in Sweden, in Bohuslän, Sweden today. It does exist. And when I found out that the place did exist, instead of it being north where Lofoten is, far north of Norway, I decided to keep it true and leave Alfheim in Bohuslän, Sweden, down to the south, which meant that everything I had written on the first 3 rewrites of them going north, they were really going to be heading south, which meant they got to go south on the Glomma. And I went, the river, the boats. I was so stoked. So I dove into boat research, went into the Viking launch ships. I had so much fun. And I'm like, I'm really going to bring these out. And one of the things that I learned was life on these Viking boats. And I remember there's this one moment where I read, they were on these ships for a very long time. There were no facilities. If you go, you literally dropped your pants and put your butt over the side of the boat, and you went in front of everybody. And I'm just like, yep, things you don't think about.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wouldn't it be funny if Colin is going to see that? So I put it in there, and I'm like, yeah, things you just don't think about. And it was so much fun. The boats were without a doubt one of my favorite parts to write in the entire, in all of it. I loved the boats so much. And yeah, it's not.
Boats are awesome.
Yeah, I had so much fun. And I put the cats on there, and yeah, I just had so much fun with the boats. So
I'm gonna request a list of links to all of your research for one of my stories.
I have it. Where did I put it? It's actually on the index. If you go onto my website, there's an index, and everything is linked because I'm gonna need it again for the remaining books. So instead of redigging it back up, I just put it all on my website in the index, so you can hyperlink to all my research. And yeah, the boats were just
okay.
We should probably talk about Dolor.
Because we really should. I loved it so much that I want to know everything else that's going to happen next. I really liked it. This is like my default when I really like something and I don't know what to say because I liked it so much. I just say I really liked it a million times. Fail. There's so many interesting things. Oh, but I have things I want to share with you also, related to the costumes and the music, because I think it would fit really well. And okay, so there's this. This is related to Dolor and Shadow, I promise. I promise. promise. There's this one like form of dance that they do in Hallingdal, and it's basically a men's show-off dance in part of the like village courtship rituals.
Yep.
And I have this like really funny image in my head of Bergen doing this dance just to annoy Rune at like Rune and Colin's wedding if when it happens. I'm like, that would be so funny.
And he would do it. I don't want to talk about
He would do it.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm like reading this scene with the boats, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so funny.
Bergen,
Because like they had so they have this guy's show off dance, and then they have like they call them springars, and they're sort of like the faster couple dances. And then they have gongars, which use the same figures, but the rhythm that your feet are going is slower. And the gongars, they have no qualms about having like one guy can dance with multiple girls, or like one woman can dance with multiple guys, or like the whole one man, one woman thing that is in most European dances is not there at all. Like they just don't care. Like you dance with whoever you dance with. And so like in my head, Bergen is like dancing with 5 girls at once and then doing this like show off dance. And Rune is like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, I love my Bergen, and he knows it. Yeah, I have to ask, what did you think about Bergen?
I liked him. It's a little bit hard for me to say because he's not there as much as Rune is. So I feel like I know Rune a whole lot better just because he's been present for longer. But I like the two of them a lot, and I like that they are so, I mean, they're identical twins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like how different they are despite being identical. Mm-hmm. Like you hear so much about identical twins being identical in like their habits and their personalities and everything, and I think it's less true than people want to think it is. I think a lot of people, like, I don't know, my grandmother is an identical twin, and her and her twin, they're like 88 and they look the same. Like you still can't tell them apart, but their life experiences have been so different.
Yeah.
And what they chose to do with their lives has been so different.
Yeah. No, that's a very
so like they have this weird, like they're very similar in a lot of ways, and yet you can immediately tell which one you're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they do have completely different personalities. And it's funny because there's like a 20, 30 year past for the two of them that readers will never see. I see it. There's this one contest. I'm going to go ahead and tell you about it. There's this one contest, these two morons. Basically, Rune dared Bergen to Smith to work a forge with no clothes on. And Bergen did it. And of course, he dared him to. So Bergen does it. And then he retaliates and puts Rune to it. So Rune then works. And it's one of those things that I know about the brothers is their entire front torsos are covered with like little scars from the time they worked the forge naked. Because it was so, I mean, there's stupid little things like that. There's a couple competitions that they did get into. Some of it comes up in Lord Lennolin's Lies, but their past, these boys, what they did, it was just, they were very competitive. They were very one-up-ish. Bergen was far more adventurous, wild, and crazy, and just out there. Well, Bergen had so much to his past, and there is a lot of Bergen's past that does come out in all of his other books. I am doing a series later on to embellish what it is Bergen does, and he has so many wonderful secrets that'll be popping up that I just love Bergen. Bergen is. Yeah, he's a.
I'm excited to learn more about him. Yeah, for sure.
So you read the meeting of Bergen and Colin, the coming together at the very end.
Yeah, that was awesome.
The handshake. Oh, I had some.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, it reminded me of like kindergarten when you have a fight with someone and like your kindergarten teacher's like, "Okay, you have to hug," and you're like, "I don't want to touch you with a 9-foot pole. Go away. You have cooties." That was definitely the adult magic wielding equivalent to that.
Yep. No, those two, yeah, they're wonderful. The Devagar Saints, how did you handle Nordre? Monseigneur, Blaine, Duran?
That actually, I was expecting you to be more graphic than you were. So I think I added to it a lot in my imagination from what you'd said. Not in a bad way, I guess, but I think you did a very good job of leaving it vague enough that people who needed it to not be quite so bad for themselves could let it be not quite so bad for themselves. I'm very I haven't made up my mind about Ori. I can't decide if he's helping them because he likes Colin or if he's helping them because Monseigneur wants a spy or like what. So we'll happily wait and find out in the future. I'm sure he will be back when the confrontation between Colin and Monseigneur happens. And I'm really fascinating too. Like that little seed that she finally managed to sprout and forgot about, that like has got to become a problem at some point. I just know it. That's going to be an issue. Someone is going to find that tree and use it for nefarious purposes. Like, it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. The same with Bill Rost and Heimdall.
Mm-hmm.
When she finds the Savy.
Mm-hmm.
How did that I think that's the one part of the book where it really gets into the fantasy. Like really you see it really steps away from the history at that point, and you really start to see how fantastical the world is going to become. That's definitely foreshadowing that I put in there for that. And I was wondering how you
I liked it. It made a lot of sense, and it was, I liked that because she was looking at it in a different way, in a different world, in a different context. Mm-hmm. When she was growing up, mm-hmm. really clicked, and she figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, I liked that, because a lot of times when I can't figure something out is because I'm not looking at it the right way, or I need to see it from a different perspective, and whoever is trying to teach me is not giving me that alternate perspective that I need.
Yeah.
So I really liked that a lot. Yeah. It also felt very natural. I mean, even the Norse have kept their tales of trolls and gnomes and all of the fey creatures very much alive.
Yeah.
And they still do things like, there's this little story I grew up with. It's a Swedish story, but it could have been a Norwegian story. The Norwegians call these little creatures Nisse, and the Swedes call them tomtens. And the story is about a farm in Sweden, and the like family is Christmas, and the family has completely forgotten that the tomtens exist. Yep. And every year at Christmas, the family is supposed to leave a giant bowl of porridge with a huge dab of butter in the middle for the like tomtens, so that they continue being good and don't become evil. And typically for the like head of the Tomten clan. And so this little story my mom used to read me is all about the like grandchildren and the wives of these Tomtens who are like, okay, the family's forgotten, but the head of the Tomten family doesn't know yet, so we need to go steal some porridge so that it doesn't get bad. And it's like these little, they're like maybe 4 or 5 inches tall, and they have to climb all over the furniture. And meanwhile, this family is having like a big Christmas feast and like playing games, and they have to like go on this adventure through this house and not get caught. It's amazing.
I love, and that actually brings me to Hugh Keenbill. The poem that Colin sings to Rind in the very beginning. And I can't call it the very beginning. It feels like the beginning to me because I remember when it was 270,000 words, and Lord Llewellyn's Lies and Dolor and Shadow were one book. So I have like memories of certain things being the beginning of the book when it turned out that it was going to be a quarter or halfway through the book. There's this moment where it's Colin has captured Rune. He's in the prisons, and they go inside. She meets up with Rune. They have that face off. She goes to a room, and Alif is there with one of the children, Rin.
Yeah.
And she sits down and tells Rind basically a lullaby, Hugh Keenbill. When I wrote Hugh Keenbill, I went through this process of what kind of a fairy tale would they have told 1,000 years ago. So I first looked up the oldest fairy tale in existence, and it turned out it was Jack and Jill. I got so lucky with this one because it wasn't just Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill is also a Nordic-based fairy tale. And they explained that the hypothesis is Jack and Jill actually was Hugh Keenbill, and it was a story of these two children who were kidnapped by the Man of the Moon and then placed within the moon. So to them, you don't look up and see the man in the moon. You see a wolf chasing two children in the moon. And the children are Hugh Keenbill, or a Jack and Jill equivalent. There is a well. They go to the well. They are captured. There is very, very similarities between Hugh Keenbill and Jack and Jill. So I did an ode to the lullaby, and I wrote Hugh Keenbill, setting it to the rhythm of Jack and Jill at the same time. And it's got to be one of my favorite moments in the book, where for me, that's really when the story started to come, just really revive that 10th century feel, is listening to a story that they may have told about their own myths 1,000 years ago. It was just amazing. And I brushed on when Colin confronts Rune in the prison. How did that go for you? When she went down to the prison, figured out that Rune was Rune, and that King Rune was that Rune down in her prison. And she goes down.
Well, I liked that when she saw him and hadn't made that connection yet, she fainted. I liked that part. Like, just, she's got so much strength, and yet something so unexpected still has the power to, like, completely knock her off guard. Literally. And then I really liked I liked the prison. I liked that you had them first meet in the forest, not knowing who each other were. I think that added a lot for me. Yeah.
We're making it sound like it's a romance. It's really not a romance.
It's really not a romance at all, but it's amazing. But if you liked the romance in Dolor and Shadow, then you will definitely, and you should read these, because it has exactly what you were saying. Some of them are not romance either. But there's this woman and her husband, and they write as Ilona Andrews. And she has an urban fantasy series that's got, like, there's a romance, but the main series is not about the romance, but the romance sort of ties some of the books together in the beginning.
In that romance, like in book 2, it definitely comes back in book 2, because I did leave the romance unfinished for book 2. But after that, there really is no romance. Like book 3, book 4, book 5, all of it. There really is another focus that's kind of laying there, and it resurfaces. So you don't. I am worried, and I've always been worried that I'm going to have people coming in going, oh, this is a beautiful romance. Let's read this romance. They're going to be disappointed when they get to book 3. And for people who read it thinking, and I think that's what it is. It's not that the book is about the romance. It's just that the romance is so fun.
Yeah,
exactly. It does so much to fill in that, yeah, we have this long journey. And it reminds me of Frodo and Sam when they're on their expedition. They do so much sitting in rocks and waiting and sitting in rocks and waiting, and nothing happens. This was a way for me to show that same, okay, it's a long stretch of time, nothing's happening. Let me give you some entertainment so it doesn't feel like this is dragging. And that's really why I inserted the romance the way I did, was as filler. It's entertaining filler while this journey goes on. That's all. It's not the romance. What did you think of Lot and Sigyn?
Oh, I liked them. I liked that he was plotting to escape despite his inescapable bonds, and like, you know that he does because it's in the mythology, but like they never say how ever.
They never say how. No,
they never say how. So I like that he's like, okay, this is burning me, maybe it can burn my bonds too. Yeah, and I like that he sent Sigyn off to carry out his scheming because he's stuck, but she's not.
Yeah,
and
I had so much fun, and I don't know how much. This is where blurb writing is really difficult. When I did this, I wasn't certain if it should even be mentioned in the blurb. Oh, by the way, while the history is going on, while this band is doing what Fand is doing, and while this war is tearing up Elfheim and these elves are coming together, by the way, I've also got this Norse mythology line going on as well with Lopt and Sigyn. And I completely kind of don't mention it at all. And I had somebody come to me and say, this is a huge section of the story, and it's never even, there's no allusion to it. There's no alluding to it. There's no mention of it. And I was delightfully surprised. And I'm like, well, I didn't feel like it was really that prominent in the story, because there's only like 4 scenes total with Loki, with Lopt, and with Sigyn. So I'm curious to see how readers will see that.
Felt like it made it feel like it was the beginning of a saga. So I think a lot of the fantasy that I've read that spans a lot of different books ends up happening in the end, and you don't know, like, whoever the real bad guy is at the end, you never know anything. There's no hinting of it until you get to like book 3 or 4, when, I don't know, maybe it was the publisher who was like, we want more books from you, and the author's like, okay, here. I mean, these are books I was reading before the internet, so it could have, I have no idea. But I liked those scenes, and I liked that they were sort of placed in sparse intervals, because it made it feel like, okay, I as the reader am clued in to what's going on in all of these different worlds, in all of the layers. There's Alfheim, there's Jotunheim, there's everywhere. I know that there are demons hiding in the shadows that Colin and Rune have not discovered yet. So they are so focused on their own little war, but like, it's very clear that one of these other bad guys manipulated their kingdoms into thinking they were at war with each other when they weren't. And so I'm really, like, I'm looking forward to finding out which one of them it was and how they figure that out. And it's set it up in a way so that it makes sense to read the whole story. And I know that it'll all make sense in the end of, I don't know, however many books you're going to end up writing. But it's all their little bits that are, I mean, it feels more like I am seeing what maybe Gudrun is seeing. in her visions.
Yeah.
So like she knows things that she can see from her visions, but she doesn't understand how they make sense until they make sense.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And all of the little bits, the bits with Fond and the bits with Lover, and yeah, yeah. I'm gonna like at some point when I have time, probably in preparation for the second one coming out, I'm going to put my Norwegian playlist on and reread the book to the music because I think that'll make me very happy.
Yeah.
I kept like being like, oh, I need to like tell Angela about this tune and this tune and this tune. There's my favorite, which is the one reason that I actually play Hardingfela and not Don't Just Dance. Is there's this tune and it's amazing and it's supposedly the hardest tune to learn, but I don't agree. It's called Fanatulen. There's like a poem that goes with it, and there's the tune and there's the story that like the poem tells. And basically there's a wedding, and a medieval wedding, and the fiddler who's playing for the dancing goes to the cellar to get the like mead bowl that everyone shares to celebrate. And he's down there and he hears the devil sitting on one of the kegs playing this tune. And he's completely mesmerized. And as the devil finishes the last notes of the tune, he hears two thumps coming from the floor above. And the fiddler goes back up with this mead bowl to find that there's been a knife fight and the groom is dead. And this particular piece of music is in the right rhythm to do one of those show-off dances too. So like in medieval Norway, when they were or anything like that, instead of having a duel, they had these knife fights where the guys would they were belted together and given like you couldn't have anything but one knife, and the last man standing won. And this tune and that story, like the poem, beautiful piece of music that like how could something that's that beautiful cause something so horrific to happen? And why was that such a common occurrence that it became a famous like every person who plays Hardingfela knows this tune. But it's such a beautiful piece of music. And there were definitely moments where I felt like that story and that piece of culture matched with certain, like when Colin was in prison or when Emma was being raped. Like that contrast of there being beauty that you can't see or beauty that you can see and it happening at the same time as the darkness. It's very much a Norwegian thing. And I think a lot of it has to do with the land and the culture and like they were very violent in a lot of ways, and yet at the same time they have such a robust love of life and kindness, and their hospitality
I
is
will say this. The Norwegians still have maintained that massive, robust love of life. If there's
absolutely.
In all the research I've seen, it's astounding. I have never seen a culture, a people so passionate about their heritage, their land, culture.
Absolutely.
They are very outdoorsy people. They are very, I swear, everyone owns a boat, a camera, and a photo.
Every single person I know, like regardless of whether or not, like every family has a cabin.
Yes.
In like their like ancestral, I guess, like valley, they have a little cabin and they spend as much time at their cabins as they can. And they go hiking, they like build bonfires, it's they have picnics, and like I went cloudberry picking because the people I was staying with when I was there to study abroad, they had their cabin up in Gudbrandsdal, and that's like right sort of in the middle of the mountains. So we got to go picking, which is details that are so specific to Norway brought me back to that trip, and now I want to go back again.
I do have to ask because I've never had the opportunity, so this is my first. Finally, how accurate was I when it came to the culture, when it came to things like the cloudberries and the food?
I loved that scene. All of them. It was the only thing is that they have other kinds of fish besides just salmon.
Yes, yeah, they do.
So like I noticed that, but I mean, it would have been based on the weather that you described. It would have been summer, I think.
End of summer or September, October is when I placed it. I followed the moons for that time period. NASA was amazing. They have kept a moon record on the beginning of time. And I went back to literally 995 Norway, looked it up on the NASA records on what they were able to predict were the moon cycles at that time. And I was able to peg exactly what day, what moon, everything took place. And I built my timeline for the story around the moon cycle, the season, the change. And then I looked up on, I think it was, I cannot remember what it was called. But then I pulled up another program online, and I was comparing the rising and setting of the sun and the moon to Norway's climate, temperature, sunrise, sunset, based on the date that I pulled from NASA's calendar. So that was different. The fishing, and it's funny you said they have more fish than salmon. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. They have herring. Okay, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I'm staying with people I know from the whole Scandinavian folk dancing thing, and so we've been having pickled herring as like an hors d'oeuvre the last couple nights. So I was like, this is really delicious. You know, they probably had some. They probably weren't just eating salmon. Yeah, that's the only reason I've like thought about it. Yeah, no. But the part where, like Rune and the reindeer, and Rune is like, I'm killing myself, this reindeer, because I want to eat some meat.
Use that, great. But I'm killing mine.
That totally happens. Like I mean, and it's not even like I'm gonna go hunting because I want to eat something different. It's like, I'm tired of eating the same thing every day. I want to go get something different. And then you make a completely unplanned trip to the grocery store just because you've decided that whatever it is in your fridge, which is perfectly wonderful food, is not what you want. And I'm like, I've had that exact feeling.
There it is. One moment.
Yeah. It also made me reminisce in a very pleasant way about reindeer meatballs, which are delicious. But I don't think they sell them outside of Scandinavia. I don't know. I've never tried looking. I will investigate on my Minnesotan adventure.
I have never.
And if that's anything.
Reindeer meatball. I've never even considered it.
They're so good. They make them. Okay, so have you had Swedish meatballs? They instead of putting them, they put them. You have to go. Okay, if there's an IKEA near you, it will probably have them because they are a Swedish company, and they do have actual Swedish food in their like cafe part. If you get to the end, I have a friend who goes there just for the food. I think it's kind of strange, but anyway. But okay, I think so. One of my stories in the spring is a serial that's based off of a Norwegian fairy tale. So I want like to read through all of the links that you said are on your research page. But I also think I'm going to put together a list of recipes and share them with you because the Norwegian food is amazing.
Yeah.
but it's these
saying this
meatballs.
like I've never actually eaten a single thing of Norwegian food. That was total research. So I'm
It's all so good. Okay, for not having eaten any of it, you did a really good job of like saying exactly the right words to like make me be like, oh, that's so good. I wish I had that. And it didn't even occur to me until I woke up this morning that I'm going to Minnesota, and like in the 1800s, basically more than half of Norway emigrated to Minnesota because it's the same weather, but the ground is flat. So it's immensely easier to farm. And there was a lot of stuff going on with like the Christians really cracking down on the folk culture, and they were burning the traditional instruments because they were of the devil. And so the oldest parting phalas you can find were all brought to Minnesota and like the Midwest. And you can't find like you can find a lot of really good musicians in Norway, but their instruments have been of the instruments. Like if you want to look at one that's really, really old, you have to go find one that was discovered in someone's barn in Minnesota. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I like remembered that I'm going to Minnesota tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that made me very happy because
the cloudberries was one thing, and I had such issues with the Aurora Borealis. That was first the cloudberries. I had always imagined them being sweet, like a sweet raspberry. So when I first wrote the book, I thought that they were sweet, and I spoke to a Norwegian, and I had asked her about cloudberries, and she's like, they're actually very bitter. Like
they're bitter and they're sour.
Yeah,
but in like a really good way.
Yeah, and she basically likened it to a cranberry. She likened it to a cranberry, and she says it's kind of it's that same kind of tartness, but it does have a sweetness. You do need they need to be sugared. You can't just have them plain. Really, you can, but she also said she didn't like them. So I had
some people. It's funny because I think traditional Norwegian food is delicious, but I've never had to eat it on a regular basis. And a lot of the older generation, like the generation who are, I guess, middle aged, growing up, they didn't have what there was to eat because the World War II really destroyed their economy. And so and the whole like big food transportation industry hadn't taken off yet. So a lot of the older Norwegians grew up eating this food every single day, and there wasn't any choice.
Yeah.
So they are less. It's less exciting to them, but they make this. It's like a porridge, and there's no grain in it. It's just sour cream, and it's so good. Especially when you put like a little thing of lingonberry jam on top.
Lingonberry jam. Oh yes. I had so much
jam. I miss lingonberries. Like you can get them in Scandinavia, you can get them in Ireland, you can get them in Germany, but trying to find them in the States is really hard.
Yeah, no,
They're
I know.
So
I'm well aware. I did try to do some of the research, like mead. I was able to get my hands on. We have a local brewery here. And it is the only location in New York State that I have found that does mead. Not just mead, like honey currant mead. So you get, it just opened up probably 6 months to a year ago. So I just finally had mead for the first time. And I'm like, all right, so this is mead. And we've done mulled mead, spiced mead, honey mead. We've been through all of them at this point. And the currant mead is so good. So that was one thing that was, and it's funny because the alcohol content is really low in mead. There's just enough, but a lot to sanitize the water, and that's all they did. It was their way of water safety. So the alcohol content was considerably low. You cannot get drunk off of this. You will vomit from too much liquids, from drinking too much before you get drunk. So the beverage that Bergen had and gave to Rune was treated. Like it was
Yeah.
not for me, which is why Roan was guzzling it. It was a lot of fun. The food. I went to
Yeah. That's, I think,
foodtimeline.com for that one and did a lot of research on that. And
yeah, there's the people I'm going to visit in Minnesota, he has distilled some, I guess, moonshine. I don't know what he makes it from, but I think it's a variation on aquavit. And that, like, to me, that scene at the end with Bergen's treated mead, I'm like, oh yeah, duh, of course. Like, you take some equivalent to, like, you take some distilled like sugary berry water,
yeah,
which turns into, like, basically it's like vodka, but it tastes better.
yeah.
And you put it in, yeah, of course, like, if he's not aware that, and of course Bergen would treat his mead, duh. So that was very real for
I had
me.
so much fun. The pipeweed, the clothing. The clothing was a challenge because when you say elves, everyone thinks of Tolkien's elves with the English garb. And that was really hard for me because they weren't wearing English garb. They were wearing Viking garb, which is your apron dresses. And there was some adapting to it was a long stretch. I'm like, how am I going to get the clothing so that it's not inaccurate, but it's true to the era? And then that's where I was able to go, hey, they're elves. I can take a little liberty here. The castles, I'll be the first to tell you, the castles were absolutely breaking all historical rules. They are 300 years ahead of the time period. And this is my argument. William the Conqueror got the idea from the elves. So that's why in the 11th century, all of a sudden these castles up. I'm
I like your version of history far better.
I was putting all these Norman castles. You know, Gunir has one, and I'm like, they have a parapet. They've got what do I do? The portcullis. They have a portcullis. And I just had a really hard time justifying it. And then I realized, hey, they're elves. They have advanced technology. Yeah. It was William who got the idea.
Well, and it makes sense too, because they, like, live forever, sort of. Yeah. So, like, they have longer to figure things out and longer to be smart about things. There's I don't know if you've read any Mercedes Lackey, but she has a series, and the first one is called The Outstretched Shadow. Mm-hmm. And the elves in that are fascinating because they are, like, so unlike elves from anywhere else, but they look the same, I guess. And they, like, have the same caring about the environment and all of that, but they are such perfectionists that they spend 500 years as an apprentice to learn one little thing in order to consider themselves passable at making a clay bowl. And so it didn't even occur to me to be confused about the castles or anything. Like, it was just, of course they have advanced technology. Every elf has advanced technology.
And I felt like when I was writing Dolor and Shadow, I was up against Tolkien. And I did not want to be compared to Tolkien. I still don't. I did not want
I don't think there's, I mean, besides the fact that you used, you know, similar sources of research, it didn't feel at all similar to me. I wouldn't, if someone came to me and told me they liked The Lord of the Rings and asked for recommendations, I probably would not include Dolor and Shadow because the story and the feel of it is very different. Like The Lord of the Rings to me is much more of a history, and Dolor and Shadow is much more of a story, like a tale.
So that brings up,
it's more similar to me. It's like Dolor and Shadow to me is a lot more like what's it called? Of course I'm blanking on its name. The ballad that's super famous.
Beowulf?
Oh man. Yes. To me, Dolor and Shadow is much more like Beowulf than The Lord of the Rings is.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, very much so. There is Game of Thrones is the other one that people have compared it to. And I haven't touched.
It's definitely more so the Rings. And maybe maybe if there was like a spectrum, then like Dolor and Shadow would be here, and Lord of the Rings would be here, and Game of Thrones would be like sort of here, not quite halfway, a little bit closer to the Lord of the Rings, but somewhere in the middle.
Okay. And the other one that people have brought up is Harry Potter, as far as the amount of adventure and the webbing goes. And the fact that both...
That's confusing to me because Harry Potter is about kids in school.
It was the history, they said.
What?
The Harry Potter takes place in Scotland. Dolor and Shadow takes place in Norway. And they both, Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings are in a...
they're in a more of an equivalent to mainland Europe.
Right.
In terms of, like, climate, at least.
Yeah. So, okay. Beowulf.
Yeah.
All right.
I need to find...
see where people are putting it.
See, right now, the books I'm thinking of to compare Dolor and Shadow to are the ones that are by Ilona Andrews, because they have, and she has some that are officially romances, but the rest are just urban fantasy, and the romances is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in her series, after a certain point, the relationship becomes a non-issue. So, like, the couple gets together and stays together and starts operating as a couple.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, there's no drama anymore. There's no, like, they still are themselves, and they still will, like, argue about things because, you know, he wants her to be safe and protected all the time because he's a guy, and that's his job. And she's like, I'm gonna do what I want. But there's not, like, there's not that concern of, like, oh, he's gonna get jealous because so-and-so is standing 2 inches too close. So that's why, like, that, but it's an urban fantasy. It's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe in my head, because I know so much about Norway and its history, maybe in my head, Dolor and Shadow is the same thing as an urban fantasy, just like thousands of years earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is like,
I do genre weird.
Yeah, I had a really hard time placing it. I'm like, well, it is dark fantasy. I think it is dark, especially with Ostromona.
It is dark.
I don't like calling it, I don't know why, but I've never really been fond of calling it epic fantasy. And
I think it is, but I think it's so much better than most epic fantasy that's where you're getting that sticking point. A lot of epic fantasy is, you know, a little boy finds a sword and ends up in the middle of a battle, and then he manages to not get killed, and so the general is like, you should be, like, my assistant, and then he becomes the king because he's, like, competent and smart and not...
Yeah, it's a
like,
rag to riches.
10 books to, right, and it takes, like, 10 books to tell that. And I think a lot of epic fantasy is not as complex as it should be. Oh, you know what? I would compare your book to Patrick Rothfuss and his books.
Name the Wind. Yeah.
I would definitely do that. I mean, the stories are very different, but I think they would appeal to the same readers.
I love gathering. How would you compare this? Because I know what I was thinking when I was and I won't touch Game of Thrones because I had so many people coming to me saying it's like Game of Thrones.
Oh,
same research.
No.
So I'm like, the plausible deniability. I have never read. I have never seen Game of Thrones. So I'm gonna when my books are done, I will indulge. Lord, I had just come off a massive...
I don't think your books are like Game of Thrones at all, because yes, you have a lot of darkness in your story, but Game of Thrones is far more graphically violent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of sex used as violence.
Yes.
In a very in your face kind of a way.
Yeah, that's what
Game of Thrones.
That is what I heard.
And your story is not like that. I mean, it's the violence and all of that is there, but it's because it needs to be in order for the characters to learn whatever it is they need to learn. And I feel like in the Game of Thrones, a lot of times it's there because he's trying to mess with our expectations of a political issue.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of you're liking this character too much, and so I have to remind you that this is like real life, and in real life in the Middle Ages people killed people.
I was told by the one viewer who's following it, she's like, I'm like 5 books in and I have no idea who the books are about. I have no idea who the main character is. And I'm like, well, who's been alive and featured in all of them? And she gave me a couple of names, and I'm like, well, those are your main characters then. And it's funny. It's just, I'm huge on, you have to know who the antagonist is. You have to know who to root for. But I love the mysterious who is the bad guy anyway. And I don't know if this is called a spoiler or not, but this is very much my views on writing and reading books. Bad guys are never cut and dried. In Shakespeare, it was, I'm the bad guy and I'm driven to do something evil because I am evil. I love Shakespeare, but that's very good.
Well, a lot of times, even he gave his villains justification most of the time.
Yes, and I was specifically referencing Much Ado About Nothing. How this into this, I am evil, therefore I must do something evil. I love it, but I don't like bad guys that are cut and dry. I was disturbed. I had this kind of a childhood, ergo I'm going to be this kind of person, and I'm bad. You can see that. What I like is the bad guy, kind of like the Snapes, where you see he's a good person, but he's got a bad side to him, or he is just a person. He's had bad experiences. He has a good side. He has his own intentions, but they're askew. That's the kind of bad guy I love. I love the bad guy where, based on your own subjective point of view, you may or may not see somebody as a bad guy. You may see him as the villain or a victim or another secondary character who's a good guy. It all is dependent upon your perspective and who you want to side with. So to me, I hate cut and dry bad guys. So, and honestly, as a writer, I had to give every one of my bad guys an explanation, and I had to see their point of view. And by the time I was done writing Laura Linolyn's Lies and Dolor and Shadow, I stepped back and went, okay, I'm on everybody's side. I support everybody. So if you were to ask me who's the bad guy, my response is going to be, well, there is no bad guy. There is no bad guy. There is no bad guy. So I'm curious how the readers are going to take that, because they're not going to get the question that Colin is faced with is, who should she trust? Who is on her side? And that is a question that will stay with her for the rest of the series. That is the question. And she will be just as perplexed and worried right along with the reader as to who she should and should not trust, who is really on her side. And that is something that I am very curious to see how readers perceive. I have like
well, I liked that, like, you showed us, the reader, that there's very clearly stuff that's going on that she doesn't know, and like it's unclear whether Arik is actually doing this for her or doing this to annoy Fond, or if he's like working with some third party. Like that's unclear. It is clear that he cares about Colin, but it's unclear what his underlying motivations are. And so I liked the part where Colin is arguing with Rune, and Rune is like, you've got a traitor in your court. And she's like, they are all loyal. And she's so convinced that everyone in her kingdom is so loyal and so good that they wouldn't think of doing something like that to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it wouldn't occur to her to betray someone like that.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how she starts to doubt a little bit, but she's not convinced. Yeah.
We haven't talked about it yet, and I'm surprised we've taken this long getting to it. Rune's new special power.
Oh yeah. Well, see, that was like another. Of course, that would happen. Like that makes perfect sense.
I have to share this because this was the most. I had finished Dolor and Shadow. I had sent it to agents. They were loving it, but said, I have no idea how to sell this. And I'm like, really? So I cut the book in half based on one of the recommendations. I was still submitting it out, and people were still coming back going, I don't know what to do with this. I have no idea how to sell this. And I'm like, you really don't know how to sell Dolor and Shadow. I do. Get out of my way. So I went self-publishing with it, and I went through one more revision with it, shaped it up after I chopped the book in half, refigured the arc just slightly, and I was all done with it, ready to go to the press. January, I had a beta reader come back and said, you've got the light side, you've got this great side going over here, but there's no counter to this. There's no dark side with your light side. And I went, oh yeah. And my characters were out of balance. Rune was significantly underpowered to take on someone like Colin. So
yeah,
brainstormed, and through the brainstorming, this idea emerged of Rune getting a force from Eric that absolutely puts him on par with Colin. And it solved so much. It clicked everything into place. It fixed the problem. I was going to be publishing in 4 months. So like 4 months prior to publication day, I have this epiphany. This idea emerges, and I have to now rewrite all of this into the book. So I did a crash. I got 2 months left to get this to my editor. It was a scramble. It was a mad 6 weeks.
It worked. It worked.
Shoving this section in there with, oh yeah, by the way, Rune gets a superpower. And it just, I
felt completely natural. It felt completely natural. And it made perfect sense too, because like Arik clearly doesn't want Colin to die, and he clearly thinks that Rune is the only person who can keep her safe and away.
Yeah.
So that Font doesn't find her. And of course Rune needs some way to like deal with her fire throwing issue. But it also for me made their relationship more fun, because they can have like a fight and it's on par, and they'll both be uninjured at the end of it.
Yes. And you know it's coming. You know there's going to be that moment, because Berrigan doesn't know yet. So you know there's going to be that moment when Colin fires off at Rune in front of Berrigan. Rune takes it, and Berrigan's just going to be like, I am so eager.
It's going to be amazing. That would be even more awesome if it happened on a boat, because like all of the Vikings who are sitting at their oars would see it too, and they would be like pulling out their swords and like getting ready to attack her en masse on the boat, and like Rune is like, guys, chill.
Funny, because like I said, I wrote this part back in January, February, March. It went to my editor in March. So I had February to squeeze this idea out and get it into paper. And it was crazy. It was an absolutely crazy time. And then I haven't even touched Lord Lenolen's Lies with this. So the copy I have right now of Lord Lenolen's Lies has none of that. And I'm like, I have to go through and figure all of that in and have it coming out. So I haven't even planned the scene yet, where Berrigan
you can't spoil it. I can hypothesize to my heart's content, and you can't tell me I'm
what do you want to see? Because I'm just like
I want to see whatever you think is best, because it's going to be amazing.
Now, I do have this one moment, and this is clearly me reaching out to readers going, so this is what I've written for Lord Lenolen's Lies. And I'm looking at this thing, and I have been back and forth on this thing so much. So I just want to get it out there, because I really value reader feedback, and I know what I want. I know it's there, and I'm still looking at it going, I don't know if it's out of character or not. I wrote this thing for Lord Lenolen's Lies back when it was a romance novel. And in all the hacking and the cleaning up that I did and converting it over to a fantasy, this one scene, there's a couple scenes that remained untouched. And one of them was in Lord Lenolen's Lies. Colin has an unwanted suitor. And she's like, this guy is very direct. So she locks herself in a room to get away from him. There's no way out except the window or through this guy. So Kalan climbs out the window and starts scaling the wall with her safe to get away from this guy. And it's got to be like one of my favorite things in the book. And my beta readers who got to the sing, they all came back saying, I love this thing. And I've had other people coming back going, really? And I'm like, well, and I this is my problem is my beta readers, some of them were just not the right beta readers. So I don't know if there's a lot that I'm just not sure what I'm going to do with this thing. It's a great thing. And what makes the saying is this is the moment where Rune is like going up to go speak to Colin, like, let's just clear the air here. And he hears her grunting outside the window because she's climbing. And he pokes his head out the window. And there's Colin stuck to the side of his building. And he's just like, you couldn't use and he's like, Colin, what you doing? And she's like, I am escaping.
He's like, oh no, you're not my prisoner.
And he's so mad about it.
Perfect sense. I mean, I've had unwanted suitors.
That's
who just they don't get it. You have to like be completely in their face about it, or they don't get it.
And my argument was that exactly. And Kalan does not do the whole dating male thing. She's like, work is my life.
No.
I'm focusing on my fighting. Screw men. I'm not. And I put that in there. One of my beta readers came back and very strongly said, "This. Why can't she just blow him away? Why this?
Because she doesn't have that experience. She's not used to it. She like is so oblivious. And I think the scene with Brand and the conversation she has with Rune afterwards lead into this scene that you're describing very well.
That's my
because like Brand calls her out on it. He's like, you know, he wanted to sleep with you, right? And like, no, she didn't. Like she was like interested in hearing about all of these other worlds, and it completely didn't occur to her.
Yeah.
And like that has happened to me so many times where I like have this awesome conversation and I go home and I'm like 3 days later and like, wait a minute.
Yeah. It is that obliviousness. And this beta reader came back and was presenting all these things like, how can she be this old and not be any experienced or knowledgeable about the opposite sex?
It happens.
Yes. And
it happens.
I inserted the beginning scene. And I actually, the dialogue that resulted in the very beginning of Dolor and Shadow, when Colin, I love it. I love it. I just remembered something I'd written. When Colin's father says, you know, you might want to consider marrying one of the boys, in reference to Rune or Berrigan. This is before the war. And she's like, I don't know. And then the war happens, her father dies, and now it's like completely not on her mind. And I put that in there to establish this is a girl with no experience. And when she was finally old enough to gain experience, she was dealing with a war and her training. The last thing she was thinking about was marriage and courtship.
Well, and she also grew up without, I mean, she had her grandmother, but she didn't have her mother.
No. Yeah,
her some matters in conversations like that.
Yeah, her parents were Dagon, Gudrun, and her father. And there is this, I love the line much later on when Rune is sitting with Kalan and she's just mad at him again. And he's like, you know, if the situations were different, we'd be married.
I know. That was so awesome. And she's like, I'm going to fire at you again.
Oh, I loved it so much.
And I love that he like picked up on that so fast and knew that like making it appear that he wanted to just sleep with her was going to push her buttons. Like he figured that out right from the beginning. And I think that was well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because that just, it made their bickering like, and it makes sense too, because like they have to work together, but they have to like grow to actually like each other as people at some point. Like they have to collaborate and work together. They can't just, you know, survive the journey
Yeah.
There are things that they need to solve, problems they need to solve that they can only solve together.
Yeah, there was a period, it was so hard. And it was really 100% character development and relationship building. You have these two enemies, and I have to go from, okay, absolute loathing, want to rip the other's head off, to settling the score, easing everything into it. And that's one thing. But even on a regular basis, you meet somebody and there's a chemistry, there is a look, there is some flirting going on, but then you have to develop and nurture this relationship, and that doesn't happen without some sort of a grounding feature to bring these two people together. And the whole idea of them coming together over this traumatic event, not good enough. The concept of these two characters coming together over the situation or the similar experience did not fly with me. So there is this one moment with Lord Lenolyn's Lies where Colin and Roan sit down and they start talking about life growing up as an heir to a throne, and they start comparing stories. How are you with the lessons? Oh, I hated my lessons. Yeah, I loved mine though. No one loved their lessons. And they start talking about how their lives were similar, and that is like the start of them really starting to come together, because there are commonalities, there are similarities between the two of them once they get off their stubbornness, and the attraction is there, and that's easy. The attraction is very easy, but if you don't have that link to really connect, you're not going to have, and I know what I'm having in store for them. What's coming up, they're going to need a bond. They're going to need something a lot stronger than, oh, you look sexy in those pants. So they're something a lot more stable. So develop.
Yeah, but I think the bickering that you had them do, not only did it make sense because they were, enemies who were forced to work together, but it also establishes a way for them to argue without it breaking that bond that they develop.
Yes.
Like from not just the characters, like the characters that I like the most in romantic type books, almost all of them have some system that is unique to them, where they can bicker and they can argue and they can have differences of opinion and want to do different things or want to solve the same problem in different ways, and they have a way of arguing about it and coming to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And there's always an argument, and I think that so many people in real life really need to read more of these, because they expect, like, oh, well, if I find the right guy, I'll never have to argue ever again.
There's a right.
And that's so not true.
Yeah.
In order to have a relationship with anyone, even if you're just friends, you have to know how to discuss differences of it. Exactly.
Yes, you have to know how to fight. In every relationship,
you have to know how to fight.
And it's great because now that you say that, and I'm like, yeah, Colin and Roan have found a way to fight, and I know what that way is. And you see more of it, like you really see, because they start to form that relationship. They start to settle into it. And one of the things that I love, that you start to see it with the sneak chapter in with what you read, Colin is submerged in this environment where she is the enemy. Berrigan is unknown. All these characters around her are absolute unknowns. Any one of them would slit her throat and leave her for dead. And she gets into this position immediately where her safety blanket, her security net is Roan. So it's no longer an I can take care of myself, get out of my way. I have no idea where I'm going. Which way are we going? And he takes her there. Now it's, I cannot survive this without you. And if I even step 2 inches away from your side, there's a good chance I'm going to end up dead. And she knows she's outnumbered. There is no raising her fire in this place. There is no standing up for herself in this place. Roan is her absolute safety net and security blanket.
And she can't use, I like that you snuck in that she can't use her invisibility trick because she doesn't have the powder anymore because Roan emptied her pouch.
Yeah. No, she is absolutely.
So she can't just leave and sneak out the way that she snuck into his camp in that scene when they first met. She
Yeah,
can't do it.
yeah, she is really, it's a completely different situation than when they were in when in Midgard. Now and this
Yeah.
is really where she's put is she absolutely loathes Rune for putting her in the situation. She's in Alfheim, but now she's in Gunir. She's with the Leosifar. She's not going to get out anytime soon, she feels. And she's just in this situation where the one person that's going to give her security, she now really hates because he put her in the situation to begin with. So now the tension has been absolutely maxed up more than it ever has been. And she needs him now more than ever to even stay alive. And I love Bergen in the background on all of this, hand on the trigger, just waiting for that moment when he can just run her through. And she knows it. So I had a lot of fun with planning out this particular capture, when it is and how she comes out of her shell, how she starts to, I won't say it. It's just, it was really a completely different style of writing, completely different genre, everything that I was working with. So that when Linolen's Lies came along, it was a completely different game. Just amazing. Wonderful experience.
Yeah. That's it's always fun writing because I was asking this question on a forum a few months ago, being like, so should I pick the genre for the book or for the series?
Yeah.
And they told me the book and I was like, okay, but sometimes when you do a keyword search for a genre term and you end up with a book that's the second in the series, then it's kind of annoying because like you like starting with the first book, but sometimes you just can't.
Yeah.
Like I have a series where the first two books are as graphic as the Game of Thrones. And it has to be that way. Like I tried to figure out a way of making that story work without it being so in your face.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. But then like the last three books of the series are like you could like the middle book is about a 10-year-old boy. And there's like nothing graphic about it at all. I mean, he gets himself into pretty bad trouble, but like the main characters are children, and this story works in that way without it being adult material.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is going to be the weirdest series ever because usually you start with something that's less and it gets worse.
Yeah.
But this like because I'm a fan of the hidden evil guy, I guess, who like has a reason for being evil but doesn't want to be famous because if he's famous then he has to deal with all these heroes trying to like defeat him and that's just too much effort. He wants to do whatever it is he wants to do that like society said was not okay, and so he like goes and hides most of the time. And in the first couple books, like he's very prominent, and he's very close to the like central kingdom. But then he like sort of goes into the background. He moves to like a little tower in the middle of the mountains in the middle of nowhere. He's completely isolates himself. And he still is sort of an annoying. You can read the book and the fourth book and the fifth book and not know that he exists.
Yeah.
But then at the beginning and the end, he's very present. But he's present in very different ways. Like the ways in which he does bad things are very different because the situations are very different.
And it's funny. You
so
said,
like the genres are changed so much.
And you said that he shows up at the end and you don't know he's there. He's not there in the 3 books, but then he is.
I mean, he's there. He's manipulating the events to be how they are. And he's managed to manipulate the culture of this particular kingdom's court.
Yeah.
But if you don't know that, you don't see it. But if you do know it, then you do see it.
Yeah. How were you with Borg's character?
Borg.
The spy.
She's like,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, the spy. I forgot about him because the rest of it is so interesting. The spy, I don't know. I haven't decided if he's really our time or not. Because that would be, like, really evil of Ark. But it, like, would be believable of him because he has happened. Because that's how he, like, convinced Rune to take Callan in the first place. So, yeah. He was, I mean, he served his purpose.
I loved him, and it's funny. I'm a huge Trekkie, so when I was going through selecting names for everybody, I came down to Borg, which is Norwegian for castle, and Sarpsborg is where the thing meets in Norway, in the region where Colin and Rune live. Sarpsborg is, I think it's about a mile from Fredrikstad, down in the very southern area of Norway. And back then, it was just called Borg. It wasn't Sarpsborg at the time. So it was a very common name, and I pulled it and used it, not thinking anything about it. Like, oh, Borg, his name is Borg. And then I watched, like, in the middle of all of this, I was watching Star Trek Generations with the Borg.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, great, every Trekkie who reads my book is going to be like, we are the Borg. And I'm just like, no. And it was, like, I went through a period where I'm like, should I change his name?
No.
So I left it, and I've just been waiting for somebody to bring it up.
I'm a huge Trekkie, but I didn't even
excellent.
make that connection.
That's great. No. That's excellent.
Like, my sci-fi and my fantasy only mixes dreams.
That's funny.
And possibly, I might turn one of those dreams into a book because it works with the way that the world that my elves exist in has, their gods have the ability to pick you up from whatever universe you're in and put you in a completely different universe.
Oh, that's fun.
So my elves, who have to end up married to each other, and they hate each other too, but for very different reasons. They meet when they're like 14-ish, and he was raised to be the heir, but she's the actual heir. But he was raised to be the heir because everyone thought she was dead. And so they immediately hate each other. She, because he grew up as an orphan. Yeah. And you got to know my father. You've known my father for, like, years, and he treats you like a son, and, like, I don't know him.
Yep.
And he's like, you're usurping my place. And they cannot get along. So, like, I'm going to pick them up from this fantasy world, and I'm going to drop them in a real life bad situation in our real world, in our present modern day.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to solve some problem to help whatever country or community I put them in. They have to solve a problem for them by working together.
Yeah.
And only then will the gods deign to return them to where they're supposed to be. They're like, we want to go home, but we can't get home because we don't know how we got here.
Yeah.
But it's like, it wasn't unexpected that they would be picked up and moved, because they go to a school where, like, that's the, like, final exam from this particular school is for that to happen. And most of the time you end up someplace, like, in history in your own world.
Yeah.
And so, like, all of this is a huge epic. This is the one I started back in when I was, this is the one that's going to take me probably 15 years to write, because I've been working on it since I was 12. But all of the characters have this, and I haven't decided if I'm gonna, like, have basically a mini series of short novels, like novellas, to deal with each of these final exams, or if I'm gonna try and, like, piece it together into a book. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah, I did that.
It's all important. Like, it is that these characters go through impact what has to happen at the end, which is a whole book worth of material on its own. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I have a lot of backstory with Berrigan that needs to get filled in. And I got to a point where I'm like, if I tell Berrigan's story in books, in story, it's going to pull Colin's main arc so off topic. So Berrigan is getting his own novella set. I have 3 books planned that cover what happened to him between, I can't even say. He's got like 3 massive events. And one of them actually covers what happened in Maracadet with, so, and like I said, it's very important. And at one point, the reader will need to get filled in. But there is no way. I was going to put it in book 3. And I'm just like, it will literally take me half the book just in flashback to fill the reader in as to what happened to Berrigan. And I'm not going to do that because I have a whole nother plan for book 3 that does keep on focus. So I'm actually going to be doing the main arc, which is Tales of the Druid, and then Berrigan's novellas, which are, they are independent. You can read them separate, but if you were read them both, it would give you so much insight into the back history, what Berrigan knows, and how it plays in the story. But they won't be main story. It'll just give you a lot more insight as to what Berrigan knows. If you want to know the workings of Berrigan, how he came to be what he is, where he's and the level of his craziness. So
I liked that one scene where he sees Fond for a second.
Oh yes,
and recognizes her.
Yes,
I loved that.
I love that moment. Yes. Yeah. That was awesome. That cross. You. It's like, yep. Still got my sword. Yep. Yeah, that actually is the first book of the Berrigan series where you get to see what that meant, and that all is tied. It's no fan.
I'm excited.
History. It's not.
I'm excited.
That is something. And I'm actually wanting. I'm not sure if I'm going to publish them and have them for like a 99¢ per book, or if they're going to be free on my website. That is something I'm still like. Because when I put it on my website, my quality does drop because I don't, if it's on my website, I am not paying an editor to edit what's on my site. So by default, if it's on my site, it's not going to be cleaned up. So I kind of want to put it in book form to ensure the quality is captured. And these stories are deserving of the quality that come with them. They're really different. And I've had a lot of people asking about Zabai's history with Berrigan and what exactly happened in Drakadet. So that I'm looking forward to. So that does need to be told.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited to see what you have in store for all of us.
I'm like, I was working on Berrigan's books, and I'm like, okay. But then every time I got a response from a reader going, oh, I love this, and I'm like, oh, see, now I want to work on Lord Littleland's Lies. And I had so many projects, so many side things going on. I was working on Broken, and I'm just like, I can't do Lord Littleland's Lies just yet. So I finally am at a point, like I've cleaned off my table. I have no events going on, and Broken is now live. So I'm like setting that aside, and I'm ready to literally disappear from social media and just go into this hole and write Lord Littleland's Lies, and I'll see you on the flip side. That's where I am. And I'm like, yeah, I'm tired, and I really just want to crawl away with Lord Littleland's Lies. And I have this timeline in my head where I'm going, I want this published April 2nd. I want to see Lord Littleland's Lies available to readers on April 2nd. That's like 6 months from now. Well, 8 months from now. And I'm like, can I pull it off? Mentally, am I in a position where I can do it now? And part of me is going, absolutely, I can race and get this done. I'm worried that the quality will sacrifice if I race it. But this is huge with me. I just got done writing a book, a huge book, like a mentally exhausting book, and publishing it. And when you look at the beginning and end of Broken, I wrote it in March. It just went live. I just published it in September. That is a 6 months. In 6 months, I conceived an idea for a book, put it together, wrote it, published it. I'm tired.
All despite all of the ramifications of like.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm tired. And I'm looking at that. Part of me is going, you know what? I deserve a break. If I decide to take a year or two off for my writing, I think, and that's where I want to be. Like right now, I do want to just, I'm tired. And I am at a point where I am wanting to kind of just go away and rejuvenate and take my time with Lord and Lies. But at the same time, it's mostly written. That's what's, it is mostly written. And I know since I wrote it last, since I looked at Lord and Lies, there's a lot with the story that's changed. I have to put that in there. My writing style has improved. So I'm going to look back at those chapters and go, oh, this stinks. And I might want to rewrite the whole thing because my writing style has improved. So, and I'm also more efficient. And I don't know how efficient I am. So there's a lot of unknowns right now, and I am scared. I am very scared of going into Lord Leveland's Lies and finding out that I can't do it. I am afraid that the very, very normal phobias writers have. Well, what if I can't recreate this awesome
again?
I have that. I have the what if my readers don't like it. But that's small because I have a very specific kind of people I'm going for. People who like me, basically. People who like my genre. I have fans. And the people who I'm targeting aren't people who just like Dolor and Shadow. I'm targeting people who like my writing in general. And those are the people who I'm hoping, those are the ones I want to appease. And my thought is, if I just appease myself, then I'll appease them. So part of me needs to just not worry about it and just do it. And I'll say again, I'm just so mentally fatigued over what I did with Broken that looking at Lies, I'm just like, I'm ready to just go away and take a long nap for a year. that's where I am. So,
my philosophy on that is, use the second to write when you get excited about it, but don't beat yourself up about it if it goes slower. Like, let it take the time it needs to take.
Yeah, and that's really...
Don't feel guilty over, oh, this needs to be out on this date. Like, no, it doesn't. It needs to be out when
and I know what that is. I read The Name of the Wind by Philip Roth. And there was such excitement and passion over his book. 4 years later, he gave us A Wise Man's Fears. And I will be the first to tell you, I did not like what he did with the story. I did not like where he took it. There was so much I did not like about The Name of the Wind. Rothfuss's writing style is gorgeous. His imagery is stunning. And he had something really phenomenal, in my opinion, with Call of the Wind that just, I loved it. And I went in expecting certain things from The Name of the, or with the A Wise Man's Fears. And there were other things where I was like ready to be excited, waiting to be anticipated. And when I got there, I was so disappointed with what happened with the sequel. I am just so frustrated. And I am sitting now here waiting for his third book to come out. And I have no idea where it is. I have no idea if he's written it. I have no idea if it's editing. I have no idea. I just don't know. No one knows. And it's been 4 years now. That book should have been released in 2 year spans. That's usually, and this is all about marketing. This isn't a should have taboo. This is about marketing. If you go beyond 2 years, you will lose reader fans. You will lose a reader gathering. Unless, of course, you're Harper Lee, who decides to release one book every 30 years. Then you have this massive calling and everyone wants your book. But
a lot of people didn't like it also. I mean, she had written it before she wrote her second one, which is the one that we all read in school.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. Yeah,
really interesting articles. There was all.
You've muted.
In different genres. And it appeals to different people.
Yeah. And I think that's really what's got me worried with Rothfuss is I know he's waited 4 years between each book, and I know we have no idea when the next one's going to come out. And I've watched his readership die off. I've watched his fandom that he built up vanish. I'm one of them. The question of, will I read book 3? Well, I started the series, so I want to finish it. I'm not happy with what he did with book 2. But mostly that was so long ago. I think I read his book 2 years ago. And I'm just looking at it going, is it going to be 6 years between releases? And that is something that I'm worried about. And I really need to seriously back off of myself, because I released May of 2015.
Yeah. You have at least 18 months, at least 18 months.
Yeah. So I do.
Before you even have to worry about it being too long.
Yeah. And I have To You coming out. To You is a 10,000 word short story. It's a romance. And subscribers actually received a copy of it already. Subscribers to my newsletter. You should have gotten a copy of it. Let me know if you did not. I'm certain I sent it out. But To You, it's a romance. That one is definitely a romance, but it is not your boy meets girl happy ending. It is. I'm actually doing an alternate ending, because I wrote the book the way I like it, and then I knew it would not appease romance fans, and it is a romance. So I absolutely altered the ending to appease those fans, and I hate it. I don't hate it. I don't like the ending. So I'm probably going to rewrite the ending back to the way I originally had it. And I will be the first to tell you, if you love romance with your happily ever after, you're not going to get it To You. Not the way I want it. And it has both versions. It has the happy ending. It has the author's version. So I am curious to see how it's received. But that's coming out in, I think, winter 2015. My editor is publishing it in an anthology. So between that and Broken and Dolor and Shadow, that's 3 books in less than 6 months that I've published. I'm tired. And I think it is okay. Yeah. You're right. If I do back off and give myself that 18 months to do Lord Letterland's Lies right. And at the same time, I'm going, but they're waiting. And it's so awesome.
But at the same time, you have appearances on your blog by Berrigan. So I don't think, I think Patrick Rothfuss, a lot of his stuff is all about random charities that are important to him, but I don't care about because they're not related to his writing in any way that I can tell.
Yeah,
so it's wonderful that he's doing all of this great work, but I don't want to know about that. I want to know about the book.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you have to worry about that, because you have those little bits and pieces of Berrigan showing up here and there on your blog, so your readers know that stuff is happening and they're entertained while they wait.
Yeah. And Berrigan's coming back. I just published our last interview. You commented about Berrigan. I don't hear from people about it. So when you said, where did you get the idea for Berrigan on your site? I'm like, oh, people are watching it. Okay, yeah. And it's great, because where I left him, I drugged him and left him in the floor of a dungeon somewhere. So that was back in April. So yeah, it's been 5 months now, and he just woke up. And I actually inserted, I think I have 2 excerpts that I went where he wakes up from that 5 month. All right, I'm making my way back. I have no idea what she's done with the place. So he's oozing his way back into the site. And I have this massive plan. I'm literally calling it Battle for Blog. That's what, where that's going. But it's Battle for Blog, and if you sit down and actually read all the posts in chronological order, you can see how this thing unfolds between Berrigan and I. And my most recent one, I recommend you read it. It's called Liar. I just published it yesterday.
Oh, I think I did read it. I think I read it on Facebook. And I think I commented. Yeah, I liked that a lot.
See, that triggered so much inspiration for this It's my idea. I'm calling dibs. I'm so worried. I haven't even formulated it yet, but I was writing it and I'm like, that is such an awesome idea. Basically, this writer sits down and writes the story. And it's still going to be about Bergen, just so you know. And Bergen basically takes over the author and establishes himself as the author of his story. And suddenly the writer finds themselves trapped in the story being written by their own fictional character. That is like this idea that I've got now, and I'm like, that is really awesome. And I just thought, what would it be like if Bergen were to write my story? I felt fear, like real fear. When I conceptualized that yesterday, I'm like, I know what I'm doing to him. I know what I've done to him. I know what I'm going to do to Bergen. Bergen knows what I've done to Bergen. Bergen's not happy with me, justifiably so. And I'm looking back at everything I've put him through. And if he were to have the pen over me, and Bergen's very vengeful. Like there's no, I am so screwed. And I felt fear. I'm like, I'm looking at Bergen. He's like, I am the author of your story. You just don't know it yet. And I'm like, help. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just, it was really interesting. So I do plan on doing this off story where, yeah, the writer gets trapped by their fictional character in this book. And suddenly it's the fictional character writing the story. So that I'm really eager to see. That I'm just like I'm salivating to get into that one. But Lord Lenolin lies first. So, but yeah, I really need to. I think I do need to back off. And I do have Lord Lenolin, or I do have Bergen to entertain the masses. So
Yeah.
she's like, yay,
yay. I took your Bergen showing up on your blog, and although not all of my characters have shown up there as consistently as I want them to, yet, but they will come.
And the thing with that,
and
I know my sister reads it. My sister is a huge supporter of me. She was the first to love Bergen. Absolutely the first. I wrote Bergen, and I spent so much of my time going, I love Bergen. Every time I say I love Bergen, my sister reads Dolor and Shadow, puts it down, calls me on the phone, and the first thing out of her mouth is, I love Bergen. And I'm like, what? I love Bergen. And we will have conversations where we will just repeat, I love Bergen, over and over.
It does happen. Things like that happen.
Yeah, and
sometimes words are just not enough.
Yeah.
And you just have to repeat yourself over and over.
That's it. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, and I love so much in the beginning when Swan dies and the brothers watch their mother pour all of what she's got into her daughter, and then she dies. It was just,
yeah.
And it was funny, that whole thing, all of it. The father talking to his dead wife and asking her to forgive him for killing all the children during the Astromonaf. And because she's dead, she doesn't answer. And he's gone insane. So he starts crying, pleading, please forgive me. And she won't answer. And Bergen and Roan walk out, and Bergen gets on his horse and says, I'm going to get help. I'm going to go to the Devagar, bring them back, and we're declaring war on the Dolkafar. And then Torun comes in and says, your father's killed himself. That whole thing was not originally in Dolor and Shadow. It was actually one of the last things that I wrote. It was going to be the opening scene for book 3. And I had one beta reader who took one look at that and said, what he proposed a whole lot of things. And I told him about this segment, and his response was, why are you waiting until book 3 to show this? I don't know. He's like, put it in Dolor and Shadow. So the whole opening chapters with Swan dying, everyone dying, and Bergen leaving and Rune having everything dumped on him like that, that is all pulled from book 3, and I put it to introduce the series. And it just, I love how
it works really well.
I love how that turned out. That was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Thank you for talking to me about all of your awesome ideas and Norwegian stuff. And if I manage to put together a recipe book of Norwegian recipes,
I will
I'll let you know where to find it.
Yeah, and something like that I would love to post on my site. So anything like that, I love the making of with my website, where anything that contributes to the research I put in that section. So I would love to like post a link through to you on that, because
I'm excited. I'm excited about my Norwegian food. I have to actually I was in Norway for 2 months and I was learning Norwegian. So I decided to write all of my Norwegian recipes in Norwegian so I wouldn't forget them. So I have to translate them again. Because of course I've forgotten my Norwegian.
Yeah. No, I would love, there's a lot of these foods and I'm just like, I would love to try some of these.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think if I found stuff that you can order online, because like the reindeer meatballs that the Sami sell, you can get them in any grocery store in Norway. They like can them and you just open the can and reheat it. They like are in the gravy and everything. So the other thing they make that's really good is like carrot and rutabaga. It's like mashed potatoes, but with carrot and rutabaga and not potato.
Yeah,
it's really good. Really good.
And that's when you get
sugar beets. Oh, and there's so many good songs. I'm gonna like send you an email with like 20 different. Some of them are Swedish and some of them are Norwegian, and it's like really interesting because the music is very different but very similar at the same time, and there's like a lot of cultural conflict about which is better. That's like and like Bergen would like one side and Rune would like the other side. And they like would not be able to agree on which was better. Like just yet another one of the conflicts that they
would lies. I just it's so much
fun. So I'm very, very excited to read more of your fantasy worlds.
Thank you.
And like mooch off of all of your research and all of that. So
yeah, I will make sure I post all of it for you so you can mooch off of my research. The Viking lake.
You're definitely making my life less challenging because I'm starting a huge project that's not related to writing at all. I don't know. I have to plan when I'm doing it next week, and I'll probably start it in like January, and then I might have another thing that is related to publishing because I have a lot of other stuff. But
if you
particular story that I want to write that's Norse related.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a fantasy. I guess it sort of is, but it's not. It's more of almost a children's adventure story. Like this fairy tale I am using to frame it. They like these two twin princesses go off on this adventure when they're 10. And then there's one sentence that is like, and then they explored the world and had a crash and landed on this beach, and then they met these guys and married them. And like it's literally one sentence that takes up 10 years of their life, and you're like, but where did they go, and what did they do, and what did they see, and what did they learn? And why were their parents okay with them being gone for 10 years without notice? And what? So my series is going to be like the first probably 10,000 words is going to be like the beginning of what is basically the entire fairy tale.
You say 10,000 words, and that took me back. When I started Dolor and Shadow, I had 10,000 words down, and I deleted it. That was one of the accidental oops.
Oh no!
I restart Dolor and Shadow from scratch because I deleted. Like I lost 10,000 words. I cried. I'm like,
that's a lot of words. I have on purpose like dumped more than that, but like if it's by accident and it's gone forever, that's scary. But like basically the first 10,000 words of the story is going to be the fairy tale fleshed out a bit, and then the rest of it is going to be everything that happens to the two girls and the two guys who at the end of this fairy tale end up married to each other.
Yeah.
And it's like what happened between, when they were 10 and when they met.
I had asking me if I'm going to do a love triangle between Bergen, Rune, and Kalon. And I just need to put this out there now because just for my own sanity and my reader's sanity, I do not do love triangles. I don't like them. Colin will not end up with Berrigan at all, ever. There is none of that crap. So
yeah, no, I didn't think there would be. It didn't. They are too much enemies, and they don't have enough in common.
Yeah.
Mostly, I mean, I could see Berrigan falling for her because she would never say yes, but I can't see her falling for him ever.
Yeah.
So
no.
if it was, it would be entirely one-sided, and
yeah,
and I don't think she's his type.
No.
He definitely no.
I mean, women are his type, but
no.
he doesn't. Yeah, there isn't, and
but he doesn't have like he doesn't have an attachment to being with one woman in the way that I think Rune does.
Yeah, that's right.
So like he might be interested, like I could see if circumstances and history had been different, that like if the war had never happened, and if Eyolf had brought Colin to meet them back when they were still teens, I could have seen Berrigan trying to like sleep with her just because she said no.
Yeah.
But it would be a game to him.
Yeah, very much.
And like everything that has happened between then and now makes it not
character. There is with Berrigan, it's not. There's like what you see on the surface, and I put so much into why
there's so much below the surface that you hint at, but like don't talk about. And I think that works very well for him because you can see that there's something going on, but he doesn't show it, and he refuses to talk about it even to Rune a lot of the time. And I think
yeah. No, there's a whole lot of everything underneath Berrigan, and I am just so excited. There's like so much I'm remembering, and I'm like, there was one day I woke up and I was going through the book in my head, and I went, oh, it's already published. Oh wait, no, that's part 2. Oh, I'm good then. So there's it just there are some moments in Lord Lenolyn's lies. Honestly, I think I'd prefer Lord Lenolyn's lies to Dolor and Shadow. I think for me it's just so much better with Lord Lenolyn's lies because they're not. It's a completely different game of live or die. It's a completely different style of it. You find out what happens to Seeking. You find out where Lopt is coming from, and I introduce another character. You get a little bit more information on everybody all the way around, and you start to see layers underneath layers. There was one person who approached me and said, you talk about Colin forgetting and having no childhood memories, but she doesn't really. She remembers everything. But
there's a lot she doesn't remember at the same time.
There is a lot that she doesn't remember, but it's not just that. With Colin, there's also, it's not so much memories, and this is where things get sticky. It's not that her past memories were repressed. It's that her future memories were repressed. Because Colin has the gift of sight, or she did, and that was taken away from her. So it's not that the memories as in her childhood, there's like a lot that was definitely askew, and you are only seeing bits and pieces. And I think Colin doesn't talk about Ori. She doesn't remember Ori. She does talk about when she came to Lord Lenolyn. But her life prior to Lord Lenolyn, she really doesn't mention much about. There really isn't anything that she's talking about. And it's done in such a way that she doesn't remember, that she doesn't even realize that her memory was taken. So
yeah. She was young enough that she wouldn't have, like, if she realized she didn't remember something, she wouldn't have thought anything about it. She's like, oh, well, I was 4, so, like.
Yeah, no, it's very much, I mean,
but
yeah. And I'm really curious to see reader response to it. Just really, I need to write. It's like
well, in that case, I will let you go right now that you're all excited about it. For coming back, we had an awesome discussion. So And I look forward to having you back in February for Broken.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
so
that'll be fun.
I want to say thank you so much for pushing it out till February. I misread it this morning.
Booked until anyway.
February, and I'm like, yeah, February's fine. And it wasn't until later that I processed. I was thinking November.
Oh, yeah, no.
And I was like, oh, I'm like not mentally okay right now to be talking about Broken just yet. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll be okay. I will get myself okay for this. And then later when I went back and said, oh, it's February. Oh, that's great. So thank you for pushing that off.
Yeah.
When you did.
Well, I didn't push it off. I just was like, well, I can't read this until then. So
yeah,
that's when it's
great. No, that worked out absolutely great.
I have next month planned. It's scheduled for the 2nd, sometime in the morning. I think at 11. Also, again, actually, science fiction, sort of dystopian science fiction. That'll be fun. And then December. No, and then November is sort of like it's like set in a circus, but it's fantasy, but it's sort of paranormal, and I think there might be some elements of romance in it too. So that's a good label. And then December it's sort of historical fiction that it's like the same people reincarnated and having to fix the same problem and like work with themselves over time, and it'll be very interesting. So we have planned through February of what we're reading, so I'm excited.
Wonderful.
It's easier to schedule things further in advance too, so thank you for all of your help with that, by the way.
You're very welcome. Absolutely. It's been I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to your witch. Oh, help me here, Macon.
Oh, my witch ball. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that. You should totally become involved because
I am.
Save Konas count as witches.
They are. I flipped
They
out.
are.
In my house, contain yourself, but in my house we don't celebrate the Christian calendar. We celebrate the solstice. We actually celebrate our Christmas on the 22nd or 23rd, depending upon the solstice. So Halloween in this house is an event.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And yeah, I go back to All Hallows Eve, and I'm actually tempted this year not to get pumpkins for the kids, but rutabaga for the kids to turnips for the kids to carve, because in Ireland, who originally did the jack-o'-lantern, they used turnips to carve out the faces. And if you've ever seen one, they are far more creepy looking than any pumpkin. I just need to put that out there. And I think it's because they're using a turnip. Just that alone, you see it and you're like,
well, if you carve a turnip, it ends up being like flesh colored for Ireland skin toned people. It's flesh colored.
And pumpkins are just cute and pleasant. No matter how scary you want to make them look, they're cute. No, the turnips look creepy. So I'm tempted to do turnips this year to carve. Just see the look on kids' faces when they walk in, and so. No, I'm really looking forward to it. So that'll be fun on my site regarding your witch night. And
awesome. I want to get some more authors involved too. I really want it to be a multi-promotional thing, and I think it's so interesting because witches from different cultures do different things, and witches in different cultures are perceived to be good versus evil in different ways. And there's like the ways that witches have been used in writing is like a whole nother layer on top of all of that, drawing from bits and pieces. It's so fascinating. I'm so excited. I want this to be every Halloween forever because I'm so excited.
It's already been 2 hours, but I want to talk to you about the Sidcona and the magic system and the save.
Okay. Well. Okay. Yes. You should. Put yourself on the list and then go do one of the spotlights and we can talk for an hour about that specifically.
Yeah, the magic system in itself with Dolor and Shadow is a whole nother wow. And it just I'm really looking forward
Yeah.
So.
That'll be really fun to talk to.
I have to ask, you should have had, and I cannot remember, at the end of your book, there should have been a password for you to unlock Beneath the Mountain. I just uploaded it.
Or maybe it. Updates is your website, but that's at the end of the extra chapter. The thing is, with I am reading it on Kindle, and Kindle sometimes hides things.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to upload the new versions to my phones, and I still have not figured out how to do it. And I mean, I've removed the app, I've deleted all the books, I've re-downloaded, and it is still not doing it. So,
yeah, I don't think it's there.
I will email you.
I think you might have to email the Amazon Kindle support people and tell them to resend it. I don't think it's an automatic thing to update a book anymore. I think you have to
verbally say update this. Okay.
Do it. Yeah.
I will email you the password. There's deleted scenes, deleted chapters. There is upcoming scenes in Lord Llewellyn's Lies that I include in there, and there's a lot of stuff. Basically, there's one moment where I actually go through a chapter and I break down, kind of like an author's commentary on the chapter, so you can see where I pulled some of the research from and the thought process.
That'll be really interesting.
So, and it's not the whole book, of course, because I have a life, but it's excerpts, especially the more interesting excerpts where I pulled and did that. So it's definitely worth a walk beneath the mountain. So, and that's like a feature I'm doing on all my books, no matter which one you publish now. Every one of them will include you've unlocked this, and here's the password for it. So once you finish any one of my books, Broken has this, you will have access to deleted chapters, insights, behind the scenes. Basically, it's the special features of a disc, which it's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have the same thing too. It's not structured in the same way, but it's the same idea. So yeah, I
will email you that shortly, so you have the password.
Yeah,
and pass it on to your readers if they let them know what the password is as well. I have to update the PDF copy and get that onto CreateSpace, so print copies will have it. But basically, anyone who purchases a print copy at this time, I will be sending them a free bookmark along with the password, kind of as I'm sorry you got the wrong copy here. Forgive me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again.
Thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you more.
Yep, always. Thank you.